You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. It's wonderful to have you. As always, the Chris Voss Show is the family that loves you, but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as your family does, because, you know, you probably are the black sheep of the family, or if you weren't, you probably wanted to be, because the black sheep always seem to piss everybody off. So we accept you and the family, and you're always part of it. Unless you're like a super evil villain person that's horrible to other human beings, we might kick you out for that. But other than that, we're always here for you, and we love you. All the time. And what we do is, in response to that love, we just ask that you go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss, and subscribe on TikTok at Chris Voss1. We've been bringing you for 15 years all the smartest people, the billionaires, the CEOs, the authors, the Pulitzer Prize winners, the astronauts, the people who do White House presidents' advisories, all the great people 4 times a week, pretty much 4 times a day, actually, on a weekday, and 10, 15 to 20 shows a week. You can tell I'm losing my mind. I can't even keep up with it all. We have an amazing young lady on the show with us today. Kat Kennan is on the show with us today. She's the founder and CEO of Radical Customer Experience. I love customer service and customer experience, and holy crap, do we need to get back to talking about it more and everything else? So we're going to do some of that today and find out how you can do better as companies. You know, you companies out there can do better. Kat is a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and passionate marketing expert known for building high-impact customer service strategies and campaigns for CEOs, nonprofits, startups, as well as B2B and CPG clients. As the founder and CEO of Radical Customer Experience, she specializes in trauma-informed and inclusive marketing services, for which she has developed the 3 R's business model, an empathy-driven customer approach combining inclusive marketing, technology, and infrastructure to deepen brand loyalty based on the proprietary, research-based Radical Human Intelligence platform, home of the Cancel Culture Checkup and Brand Sensitivity Score. Welcome to the show, Kat. How are you?
I'm great today. Yeah,
awesome
absolutely.
Awesome. Give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So personally, Kat Kennan on almost everything, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram, what have you. The website is radicalcustomerexperience.com.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And, yeah, there you go.
And we mentioned a book in there. What's the plug on the book?
Yes. I have an ebook that was a bestseller in 5 categories about empathy in the workplace. Mm-hmm. It is called Beyond the Mask.
Beyond the Mask, the lessons I've learned on empathy in the workplace. There you go. People can order that where fine books are sold. Is that on Amazon?
It is.
There we go. Okay, here we go. I think I found it on the Amazonian. So tell us, give us a 30,000 overview of your company and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a lifelong marketer, marketing executive, and a number of years ago, say 2018-19, I actually had a couple of back-to-back traumas happen to me and was diagnosed with PTSD at that time. And my analytical brain was still operating, and I realized that I was perceiving marketing messages very differently at that time. And I knew it was in the realm of customer experience. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with it yet. But fast forward 4 to 5 years later, and I am now teaching trauma-informed marketing, which to my knowledge is something that I'm creating, but teaching trauma-informed and strength-based techniques to brands, primarily consumer-facing. And Yeah, it's all about empathy, which
There you
is
go.
so important.
So what were some of the things that you were finding in your response to marketing? Was there stuff that was triggering the traumas that you had?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the big misunderstanding about trauma, obviously, we know about it from a hospital perspective or from a vet perspective. But, the reality is that every single human being on earth has experienced major trauma,
Hmm.
especially if you look at it in the lens of the pandemic.
Hmm.
40% of us lost someone we know.
Yeah.
That's hugely traumatic. One example that I talk about a lot is the holidays, or particularly Mother's and Father's Day. And if you think about it, around leading up to those holidays, like every email in your inbox, every post you see, every commercial is just bombarding. Don't forget mom, don't forget dad. Here are the best gift ideas. And, for those of us that maybe have lost a parent, it can be extremely triggering. Um, and but there are some brands doing really good things. Etsy is one. Ancestry did something this year where they said, "Hey, we know this time of year is tough for many of you. Click
Hmm.
here to opt out of our Mother's Day messaging."
Oh, wow.
So I know the first time I saw that as a consumer, I had lost my mom as my first Mother's Day without my mom, and
Hmm.
I was like, "Oh, they see me."
Ah,
Right?
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
And
That makes sense.
yeah.
'Cause, there's some things that they're like that. Like, when I lost my father, Father's Day was a little raw to see everyone celebrating it for the first couple of years. You're still in grief for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I can understand how that works. And that makes sense if, brands, don't want to be triggering the traumas or issues people have. For a long time, Facebook sends you those reminders. If you haven't turned on, I think you can turn them off now. But they have those
Yeah.
reminders they'll send you of like, here's your post from like a year or 2 or 5 years ago. And it was especially triggering when I would get post reminders from, oh, here's me putting my dog down 2 years ago or whatever. And if you're still in that grief phase, that could be a little hard to put down. Now when I see the post, I'm actually pleasantly reminded and grateful that to be reminded of what a wonderful opportunity I had to have people in my life. But it's hard, especially when you're in that grief stage. So you help brands deal with some of these people that are having issues that might get triggered by certain things and stuff, and radically bring better customer service and different diversity. What does it mean to radically bring that to the thing? What's the difference between, like, say, radical vulnerability, as you put it, at empathy, and radical authentic investment as opposed to just normal?
I think we're leveling up.
Mhm.
It's not enough to, use a popular word or something that's trending. It really needs to be truly authentic.
Mhm.
And, as marketers, we are really good at coming up with buzzwords that that can quickly become pretty meaningless.
Mhm.
But my whole company, Radical Customer Experience, from the very beginning, I really pushed and adopted this idea of taking it that next step further.
Mhm.
And so when I was thinking about what those core tenets of the business would be, I knew vulnerability, I knew empathy. At first I said authenticity. And the more we got into the research, we realized authentic investment was a better fit.
Mm.
So it's companies that, they're not necessarily just donating to donate or
Mhm.
participating in fundraisers just to be a part of it. They are really, really giving, whether it's profit share or whatever it is, giving to those, issues that they care about because it goes into the DNA of the company.
Mhm.
That's authentic investment. Or really investing in their local communities where their employees are coming from. And this doesn't mean, adopting a park bench or, a piece of the road. It really means saying investing in future workers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the one thing you talk about is how companies can avoid cancel culture. What does that mean? What is that about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the last number I saw is like 40 to 50% of executives are terrified of being canceled.
Yeah.
To the point where, and I don't blame them at all, but to the point where they don't really say anything. They're afraid to say anything publicly,
Hmm.
and but at the same time, research is also showing us that over 60% of consumers want brands to speak up.
Mm.
They want them to stand up for issues. And so there's a fundamental conflict there. So we put together a little software product called the Cancel Culture Checkup.
Oh,
But
wow.
it is essentially based around these three tenets. And now it's third party data science verified. The thoughts that came from my brain to the platform are actually proving out, which is very exciting.
Mm.
But, it's a, psychometric based questionnaire that brands can send to their consumers, whether email or social. There's also a built in audience if they're looking for impartial consumers, and it really is testing sensitivity. So, how sensitive do your customers perceive you to be as a company? And we're it's really startling,
Hmm.
and then we're able to show sort of how each brand is positioned against average with those tenants and even subtenants, and really diving down. And then the platform actually provides recommendations about what brands can do next in order to say maybe they're doing really well on authentic investment, but not so great on empathy. So we can help them get to the next spot.
Definitely. You saw that with the Bud Light kerfuffle, and it's been an expensive turnout for them. And for the first 30 days, they try not to say anything, maybe to
Mm-hmm.
see if they could quell it, or maybe it would go away, or it'd just be a fad. And it almost seemed like the longer they didn't say anything, the worse it seemed to have gotten for them sales wise and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of PR crisis, saying nothing very rarely pays off.
Hmm.
It's specific actually to our questionnaire is, if a brand is vulnerable or radically vulnerable, are they open to admitting mistakes? Are they open to actually apologizing? And that goes a huge way, with consumers, especially since our research is showing us that 83% of consumers, 83%, feel like brands do little to nothing in order to address any kind of customer service issues. That's pretty astounding. I know I've been brand side for the majority of my career. And if I was told that 83% of my customers weren't happy, I'd feel like I needed to do something about it.
Yeah. There was who was the actor recently with his wife? He's fairly popular. He was in that '70s show, and they didn't.
Danny Masterson.
Yeah, they did some sort of. Letter to a judge, and they had to come out and do an apology. I don't know if it was any good or not. I didn't really follow it, but I know that was an example of, because they are a brand. I mean, people buy. He
Yeah.
sells his wares of acting, and so I think some products he's involved with, or investments he's involved with, and so I think everyone's a brand now, pretty much. This microphone is a brand.
Absolutely.
My Siberians have their own OnlyFans and TV show going on. They're doing a reality pilot for Netflix this fall. And they look at me and they go, "We got more subscribers than you do, and we're dogs, eh?" And I'm like, "Wow, okay, all right, I see how it goes." They're Siberians; they're pretty disrespectful. But so this is something, you put the finger on the pulse. Brands need to be seen. Like a good example is what we're seeing with Disney and the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. This woke fight they've been in. And it's kind of interesting, and I've always been kind of curious. I think I know how people in Florida see their governor for the most part. But I think, Disney as a brand too is kind of like, I know how much parents and children love Disney. I mean, I don't have kids, so I'm not a Disney fan. I mean, but they're a great company. I grew up watching, Walt Disney, and I think it would come on every Sunday or Monday night, the Walt Disney show, and it would play whatever sort of stuff was going on. I grew up as a kid. I enjoyed it. I'm just not into animation anymore. I'm old. But they've gotten into one, and it's kind of interesting how they're battling it. They're battling it through court, and it seems like now Ron DeSantis is giving the mea culpa, like, okay, we're done fighting you, and like, not really. So that's kind of interesting thing, because I don't think they really apologized for anything. They're actually going on a war and saying bring it on, and it's kind of interesting the dynamics of you think about from what you're talking about, where I don't know, one brand's going to have to apologize to the other, maybe eventually. I don't know, or maybe there's going to be a recognition by a court that says one of you is wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the chances of that are probably pretty high. I think the Disney example is particularly interesting because they've always been a relatively conservative company in terms of protecting their brand and, what people really see sort of behind the curtain. They're really standing up. And, statistically speaking, with the research, consumers expect brands to stand up. And, for whatever issue it is. And so, we see a bigger backlash for brands that maybe tried to stand up and then backpedal than ones that just stand up and stay there.
There you go. So that may explain some of the reasoning. That was kind of what I was trying to get to. You helped me get over that hump. I couldn't find the way to get around that mountain. But basically, so them standing up is them signaling with their brand that, hey, we support, I think it was over LGBTQ stuff, things like that. And so we're putting up the good fight for the brand. Do you think a lot of people that support Disney are backing that? They're like, hey, it's good that Disney's taking a stand. We support them.
Yeah, I absolutely do. There's a report that comes out every January from a huge PR company called Edelman. They do the brand trust report, and it's a global survey that really, hits the pulse on what consumers are thinking, around the world. And, they've gotten this, this data out for the last several years, and it's not changing. It's only getting stronger.
There you go. Well, that's interesting. Now I kind of understand that whole dynamic more, because I was like, I don't know if this whole fights, and I don't know if it looks bad or looks good, but now that I've talked to you, I kind of understand how the signal that's coming from Disney means they're standing up for maybe their employees, maybe they're the people that come to their thing, because everybody wants to enjoy the Disneyland experience and go there. It's a fun place. It's supposed to be just a fun place. I mean, I've never gone to Disneyland and been like, hey, what is that beast that's in the mountain, Space Mountain or whatever? What is it? I don't know. What's the Ice Mountain or whatever the hell it's called? It's clearly I haven't been to Disney in a while. But what are the little elves trying to say to me? Are there elves at Disney? I don't know. It's been a while since I've been to Disney. Clearly, maybe I need to go. So there you go. And so companies need to take and work on is radical vulnerability, is radical empathy, and radical authentic investment. Really doing large signals, doing massive signaling of what their values are and their morals.
Yeah, I don't think it's doing enough, but it's trending up. And I think that the same companies who have been ahead on other social issues, whether it's sustainability or, overall ESG efforts and even diversity and inclusion, these are going to tend to be the brands that are speaking up. They're just, a bit more forward thinking. And you also see great examples of brands that, what comes from their DNA is what they talk about, whether that's Patagonia or, or similar brands like, they're standing up for the environment. They're also standing up for things like voter rights. And it's fundamental to who they've always been as a brand.
There you go. Now, what is the brand sensitivity score?
Yeah. So, in the marketing business world, there's something called the Net Promoter Score, which everyone upholds as the be all end all. And fun fact, it is based around one question, which is whether or not you would recommend the brand to a friend. So while it is a predictor, it essentially tells anyone that's on the marketing side how your customers feel on average at any given moment in time, which therefore means absolutely nothing. And in contrast, our system, which, then produces a brand sensitivity score, not only do you get insights across these three tenets and get to compare yourselves against, other similar brands, or whether it's demographics or psychographics of the customers taking the assessment, the information it spits out at you there's just nothing like it on the market in terms of insights and, getting behind these three tenets leading to sales.
There you go. The world is evolving, consumers are evolving. Do you find that Gen Zers are more in tune to these sort of methods? I know starting with the millennials, they started to care more about social events and brands that supported social stuff, or different awareness items like climate change, et cetera, et cetera. I think Gen Z has gone to the next level with it. Do you see that as one of the reasons this is becoming such a big thing as they enter the workplace and market?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, definitely first with millennials and especially with Gen Z, and goodness, my youngest daughter is Gen Alpha. But we're seeing more and more consumers, particularly in these two age categories, which is, a pretty wide gamut of years, who will walk away from a brand without a look back, right? Because of one issue, whether it was like a personal customer service issue that made them very uncomfortable, whether it was a post or an email or some sort of content. I like to say it's not like there's a room full of marketers or, executives that are sitting around a conference table trying to ruin people's day. At least we hope
it's not. Right? I always had that look of they have the evil thing with the cat on their lap, like Dr. Evil. A billion.
But it's so easy to trigger people. And I think really, above everything else, or above everything, what I'm trying to teach brands is to take a breath, to take a pause, and just imagine, what it might be like if, your consumer was approaching from a particular spot. There was a really, really crazy situation that happened with the brand Balenciaga last fall.
Yeah, that's crazy,
right? With the kids and BDSM gear, and obviously it was wildly inappropriate. But let's take it one step further. Imagine you saw that campaign and you had suffered childhood abuse.
Yeah.
So, it's just like that next level. There's a lot of next leveling in this whole sphere, I guess.
Yeah, it was. I remember reviewing that because I review a lot of these marketing stuff and marketing kerfuffles. I'm always interested too. That where people fail in the marketing, you're like, why did that fail? What were the reasons behind it? Because you don't want to step into some of those things. But that was a really interesting thing of what was going on with that, and I kind of. kind of wonder about the owner of that company or whoever is setting those up. And I think someone trying to normalize certain things to bring them into the sphere of, well, that's normal. I don't know. There was some weird motivation behind that. At least that was my perception. In your book, Beyond the Mask, the lessons I learned on empathy in the workplace, do we want to tease out some of the different aspects of that?
Yeah. So, you get a lot of personal anecdotes from me, but it's woven in with research. And I really give pretty step-by-step guides on how companies can create psychologically safe workplaces, trauma-informed workplaces, which is sort of the next level up. Again, what I guess is a theme on this conversation about leveling up. But there are simple principles that companies and families, I do this at home too, don't interrupt people. When you interrupt someone, you are literally telling them that their opinion doesn't matter, their feelings don't matter, you're completely invalidating them just because, you've interrupted. And I know that's something I will forever be working on because I get so excited. It's like everything explodes out, right? But again, it's like, take a pause, let someone finish, and then speak.
There you go. We try and do that show. People will say that to me. They'll be, I like your show about how you try not to interrupt people. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm interested in hearing what they have to say. I've heard enough of my crap. Unless I'm trying to get a joke in. There's sometimes where I've got to jam a joke in, and someone said something where there's just a great joke for it. And I think in my earlier show today, I interrupted somebody 3 times, but they left such a good mark for jokes. I'm like, hey, I got to get this joke in here. Yeah, and they were funny. So that's usually the ones like, I can't let this get away. But yeah, we try and let people talk on the show. Is there a point though? Let me play devil's advocate. Is there a point there where where we're trying to address too many people's issues and traumas? I could see if as a brand, let's say as a brand, I'm okay. Let's address people's potential traumas. We have these things in the workplace now, microaggressions. It seems to be getting more and more nuanced as to how you can offend someone, hurt their feelings, or it just seems to be anytime you can hurt someone's feelings. Or, you're not even trying to hurt their feelings. They're just going to trigger it in some sort of thing that they have about whatever, and they could be traumas. There's a point where you could just lose your mind in this, where it could be a bucket full of 500 things you'd have to do, or an endless amount of things you could do, because so many people are various and different. Is there a point where it's like, okay, what point is it sane, and what point does it reach into insanity where you can't function as a brand?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a good point. And, something that I've been thinking about and I guess combating since the beginning of the business. But I think sometimes when people first hear about the idea of trauma-informed marketing, it is daunting and it can seem overwhelming. But that doesn't mean that you're tailoring every piece of content or campaign for literally like every single issue that someone's experienced. Yeah. Like, that is unsustainable, not scalable. But more than anything, let's just take a pause. Let's just, even if you're taking, say, the top 10 things, right, in terms of major traumatic experiences, it could be losing someone, a friend or family. It could be a health issue. It could also be changing jobs or moving homes, right? Things that people don't necessarily think is this big, massive trauma, but can be very, very triggering. And, in terms of the workplace, I'm sure all of us and everyone watching, listening, has been in that meeting where one of their coworkers just has a meltdown. And you were like, I don't know what just happened, but I'm confused and puzzled. And the reality is they probably did have a trauma reaction. But the thing about trauma is that it's always underneath. It's, anger is a secondary emotion. So for most of those people that have that moment, It's not about anything that was said in the room. It's
Mhm.
not even as simple as, hey, they had a fight with their partner in the morning. It's something so much deeper. And the majority of the time when you've had a trauma reaction, you don't even know that you've had one. And if you figure it out, it's much down the road after the fact. And so that's something also just to keep in mind, is that, it's not like you'll have a list of customers, and I can say external customers or internal customers, your employees. It's not like everyone's just going to sign a drop down or put a drop down menu of what their triggers are. It's just,
Yeah.
it's not that obvious.
There you go.
Yeah, but certainly just take a moment. And if someone has something like that happen, there has to be a way back in.
There you go. Maybe, I mean, I remember after COVID, I was, people were saying, and I think I was saying, we all need to have like a major psychiatrist therapy after COVID. You mentioned how people had lost during COVID. I have relatives still suffering from long haul COVID, and probably always will in their life. It would probably shorten their lifespan. I think the average thing they figure with long COVID, it's shortened people's lifespan by probably 10 years. But maybe we all need some psychology after this. Would a good thing to do is in companies maybe address the people who have traumas by suggesting people address their mental health, go see psychiatrists, go get mental help. I know mental help is really important for people that have suffered traumas, and actually doing the work with the psychiatrist. Maybe this could be resolved that way, as opposed to just trying to dance around people's traumas.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think there's like a benefit or benefits perspective, because honestly, a lot of mental health care is not covered by insurance. Almost, I don't know, maybe it's just New York specific, but I don't think so, that, most psychiatrists no longer take insurance. And, you can't blame them because they need to make a living too. Unfortunately, they're all solo practitioners. But, there's certainly companies that could step up there. And there's always like emergency, like access, typically there's a plan like that with most people's insurance. But I think one of the biggest things companies can do is to bring in training about trauma and being trauma informed, and how to pick out, right, when someone might be having a trauma reaction. Because like I said, it's kind of undercover a lot, it's not. And, while you want to be vulnerable and have empathy, and you want it to go both ways, right? Someone might not be comfortable sharing, might not even be aware of how damaging or damaged or triggered they might be. But I do think being able to have like some really committed training around what trauma can look like at work is really, really critical.
There you go. And that's kind of what I was alluding to. Yeah, maybe we do need to amp up not only health insurance, but mental health insurance. I mean, I've been working in companies at companies all my life, and where I look, I'm like, you need some mental help. In fact, most people who've been watching the show for 15 years are like, you need some mental help. The show is the mental help I get, where all the great people come on and educate me, make me smarter, which actually has worked, actually. I know most people are like, no, he's still fucked up, which is probably true. But no, maybe we need to invest more in mental health. Maybe we need to have more programs for that. Address people's traumas. We've had a lot of people on the show, doctors, scientists, everybody from the gambit talking about traumas. And traumas, they carry for a lifetime, especially if they're not addressed. And so many people in youth, they'll experience traumas and they'll drag it through their whole life. And you can see what it makes. I mean, I've had that with my own life. And you wake up at at 20, 30 years down the line, you go, wow, I should have gotten that fixed. I should have got that looked at. And so, yeah, maybe more people in the workplace, you've given me the idea and realizing, and I think I probably already operate from this aspect when I look at people and I go, there might be some trauma there. What's going on? But as a leader, having people in your workforce, your team, or, people in your life environment, you can look at them and go, I think there's some trauma with this person. And you probably should identify it and maybe see if there's ways that I can be either sensitive to it or help them deal with it, or try and just not trigger it, I suppose. I had a friend one time that his brother had committed suicide, and I'd forgotten about it. I wasn't paying attention. I think it was up late one night, and somebody had sent me a video of someone jumping in front of a train in New York, and I shared it with him, not even thinking. And I was like, holy crap, look at this. This is shocking. And this is in the early days of the internet. And he was really triggered and very upset, and rightly so, because I'd forgotten that his brother had committed suicide. And, some stuff like that I was well aware of. And at least he told me the story once. But, ended up triggering a friend, and certainly didn't mean to, and should have been more thoughtful on my part. But, it was just one of those mistakes people make, and not intentional. But that was an example of somewhere I could have done better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, I can't remember if I said that, but during the pandemic, I went back and I got a certification in being a trauma-informed professional. So bearing my own experiences with the marketing expertise, but really understanding what's happening in our body and in our bones. And, I think the popular book now for years is The Body Keeps the Score. And boy, does it ever. But current research is actually showing, like, this is astounding statistic. Even though I talk about it all the time, I still can't quite believe it. But we are all carrying up to 14 generations of trauma literally in our DNA. Wow. So, even for someone that has had like the most perfect life or perfect childhood, which, let's be honest, none of us have had. We're still carrying, it means literally in our bones, and our DNA. We're carrying that. And especially when you meet someone that's experienced a lot of trauma and you recognize them as someone who is breaking a cycle, whatever that is, right? Whether it's substance abuse or violence or a combination thereof, poverty, right? Like, they are sort of stemming that tide, and they are then affecting the following 14 generations. Yeah. And, so I definitely give honor in that area, but, and thinking back to the pandemic, like, the real traumatic effects of the pandemic is not even going to be in our lifetime, right? Yeah. It is literally now going to be passed down in our DNA.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
There you go. So as we go out, give us your final thoughts and pitch to people to come do business with you, pick up your book, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's time for businesses to step up and do better. And, a great way to start is, why don't you start with your own customers and see, how you're landing with them. Head on over to the website, radicalcustomerexperience.com. Check out what I do. Check out the software options. I'd be thrilled to answer any questions, walk anyone through the platform. And, I am here to help. Like, honestly, our mission at RCX is to change the face of marketing by teaching empathy. But our big overarching vision is really, really to stop and slow down the mental health crisis that we are all in. And that's the purpose behind the business. Changing marketing is the entryway, is the way we're getting there. So,
There you go. Well, it's more than just about selling widgets, people. It really is. So thank you very much, Kat, for coming on the show. We certainly appreciate it.
oh, I was thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
Thrilled to have you as well. Great message. And I think I've learned a few things, and as a leader, start thinking about how I address people in my teams. If there's trauma, like you're right. Maybe if there is a crisis at work, maybe it's just not sending them to HR and firing them for having an outburst. Maybe it's trying to figure out what's at the core of their issues. Folks, you can order the book wherever fine books are sold. Beyond the Mask. The lessons I've learned on empathy in the workplace. It came out September 7th, 2023. Order that up wherever fine books are sold. There's a great Prime sale going on in a day or two. People watching this 10 years from now are going, what the hell? Prime Day 2 is in a couple days. So get a chance to order that up as well. And of course, order the books given away for your family and relatives. You may know some people have some trauma in your family. We always kind of joke about on the show about some of the people in people's family. Coming up, you've got all the holidays there. So maybe this might be a good book to give to some people that are always the problem people over at Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner or whatever. You know those people are. And if you don't know who those people are, it's probably you. Ask me how I know, because it's me. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time. And that should